Dear students, I'm very glad to have this session. If there is one person whose energy is something that I've come across very rarely in my life, it's Raj Patel. Raj Patel is the founder of Reczee. He worked in browser stack, harness. He makes it his life to transform the lives of people. He has done his bachelor's degree from IIIT Hyderabad. But what will do justice to him? Uh, the kind of energy that he puts in every single minute, every single day, and the kind of thought process that goes on into his actions is something that you won't be able to replicate. For example, when I asked him, Raj, can we have this session with for all the students? He was very clear. Shriram, we'll have to do this for this particular audience. And he has been very clear about every step of the way, and he's been so enthusiastic. His zeal and energy is like every time I see his message, it's like rubbing off us. And we are very glad and privileged to have Raj here. Raj, welcome to VIT Bhopal. This is the place to be. This is the place where dreams are made of. This is the place, the home place of the wonderful lines. We are very excited to have you here and have you guide our students. Thanks for all spending this time, Raj. And over to you.
Thanks a lot. Thanks a lot for the warm introduction. Let me talk a bit about yourself as well. So I've come across your profile maybe a month back, and all I can see on my LinkedIn feed is just great content that you have been basically engaging on and making sure that the VIT Bhopal students are actually knowing all the content which is out there, which is really gems out there in the LinkedIn feed is what I can see from your profile. So kudos to you as well for creating such a great profile as well. Right. So yeah, let me get started. So today we are going to basically talk about uh, how to basically get your first job. Right. A lot of things are out there. I'll try to basically structure it in a way where starting from your practice till you getting interviews and preparing for interviews and basically go through that journey so that all the tips and tricks which I have learned throughout my career, I can probably give it to you as well. Right. So a quick introduction, Sriram has already covered a lot of these things. I graduated from IIIT Hyderabad. I worked with Browser Stack and Harness as a team lead and a staff software engineer. I also have another product which I created back when I was in college. So I'm still maintaining that, and a lot of there are over 90,000 students just like you who are registered there. I'll give you a brief about that while we are in the session. What Stop Stock does. I guess last I checked, there were over 100 students from VIT Bhopal who are already registered on the platform. And Reczee is the new platform which I started working this year. Reczee is anything and everything related to recruitment. We started with a B2B model. We have added modules which is more towards getting students jobs as well. So I'll be talking about that as well briefly throughout the session, wherever I feel it's relevant for your learning, right? So a brief agenda. First is learn and practice. Second is getting ready for placements. And the third is what I call it is the process, right? So starting from your first year till your fourth year, roughly, if I had to map these uh, phases, learn and practices throughout your journey, basically starting from your first year till your third year when you start preparing for placements and internship drives and other things. Getting ready for placements is majorly when you are in your third year, you start getting uh, that pressure in your mind that, okay, now I need to prepare for these companies, and that's when you start getting more serious about it. And third is the AST process part, where once you are in the process for any company, what are the tips and tricks sort of that you can follow while in the process to get highlighted amongst the companies who are hiring for you. So yeah, let's start with learn and practice. So data structures and algorithms, mostly all the tech folks would be aware that this is sort of an industry practice. Most of the companies, including FANG and other companies, have adopted this model where they try to screen candidates based on their skills in data structures and algorithms. This is mostly a fair practice because till your fourth year, you don't have like a work experience sort of thing. You might have some internships, but you don't really have a lot of concrete projects to show up. So this is for companies a proxy of understanding that how well you are in coding, in problem solving, how your thought process works, and so on and so forth, right? So in data structures and algorithms, there are competitive programming websites. Most of you would have used any of these websites like CodeChef, Codeforces. StopStock, let me quickly share the profile. So what StopStock basically does is it aggregates data across multiple competitive programming websites into a single place, right? So for example, this is one of the profile, and here you can see CodeChef, Codeforces, Spodge, AdCoder, HackerEarth, HackerRank, so on and so forth, right? Now, this is my single profile where it shows that across these websites, I have solved around 388 problems. I have participated in these contests, and these are the ratings. There's top stock rating history as well. You can see a graph like your GitHub where you can see how you have solved problems across the years, and also you get this insights of what kind of problems have you been solving, right? So if in this particular case, say implementation is something that I've solved a lot, right? But probably out of these 93, if I have like say 25% of my submissions are on implementation, but if the companies are more willing to ask questions in trees, strings, greedy, so on and so forth, you can basically get this insight of your problem solving and then basically work on those areas where you haven't been good on, right? So this is a brief overview of StopStock. StopStock does a lot more than this, but I just wanted to quickly show you so that it helps you in your journey while you are coding on these websites. It's better to have an overview of where you are placed across all the categories that you're solving, right? That's on StopStock. Coming to LeetCode, so most of the students would be familiar with this platform. Right now, a lot of companies do ask questions from LeetCode or variants of them. So basically, LeetCode is a platform where you can categorically solve questions which are like say specific to greedy, specific to dynamic programming, so on and so forth, right? So solving questions here, I would suggest that once you are good with these websites, you can start working on lead code towards the end of your second year, or maybe if you are really good at it, probably try to start from your first year itself, and so that it helps your learning journey. It's more like a mathematics kind of thing in data structures and algorithms. More you practice it, it will come to you more naturally. So I would recommend to use lead code whenever you are getting to interview at companies, right? Then contests, especially, I would recommend you to participate in these contests, not just because of the ratings, but this is also because uh, this gets you in a mode where you increase your speed as well as accuracy of solving problems, right? In interviews, when you solve problem in a half an hour environment, you have half an hour to solve probably two questions, right? And if you are not good at solving those questions accurately, you will be stuck at the first problem itself, right? So contest is something that would help you tremendously in making sure that you write code which is correct as well, and you also adhere to the timelines, right? Coming to projects, just data structures and algorithms almost always is not going to land you a job. So you also need to have projects in your resume. So these projects could be course projects, which you already would be doing as part of your courses. What you can do is also have some side projects, which would uh, also be signaling to the hiring manager or the recruiter that you are working outside of your course to learn new technologies, learn how things are built, learn how web works, so on and so forth. Right? So you signal that to the recruiter as well as hiring managers there. Another good way of doing projects is internships. So internships, I would suggest to do as soon as possible. In second year, probably uh, you might not have that much exposure to say these languages and how websites or apps are built, but I would recommend you to do internships as well. This might be paid or free. Even if you're getting a free internship, I would recommend that you should do it, because this is something that will give you a learning which would be in a very short time span, right? If you take a Udemy course or you learn on YouTube, you are doing it on your own pace, right? Internships, you have say 2 months or 3 months to work on a project. This makes sure that you learn a lot of things very quickly, right? So internships is one other way to work on projects. Freelancing is another thing. Freelancing mostly is when you already have some skill that you can use to, for example, building landing page of websites, building, say, UI components for website, building some backend service for some website, and so on and so forth. Right. So once you get good at it, if you start doing freelancing as well, it basically highlights in your resume that you're working something outside of your comfort zone as well, right? Coming to some tips for data structures and algorithms. So a lot of students ask me that I get stuck on these problems and I just get demotivated out of the process, right? So one recommendation there would be that you should spend like a time boxed amount of uh, time to basically work on that solution. And if you are not able to get to that solution, it's okay to see solutions on lead code. There's a discuss section where you can see solutions. But what I would recommend is, once you have seen the solution, understood how it works, you should write your code again, which is completely by yourself, right? You should not copy paste it. You should not read code and then write line by line. Once you do that, at least you have some memory of your explanation. And if you get stuck again, you always have that option of again seeing the solution, right? This makes sure that you don't get demotivated, but still be in a way where you keep on solving problems regularly, right? One other recommendation which I would do is, a lot of candidates which I interview today basically just remember solutions on lead code, right? This is, I would highly recommend you to not do that, because interviewers have been through this journey, right? They know which candidate is actually good at solving that problem, or which candidate is just giving me the solution which is already there available, right? So to not remember solutions, as I said, it's okay to see solutions, but understand how it works, right? Diversify your categories that you solve. As I mentioned, you can see that from stock on lead code. Also, there's a section where you get to know that how many dynamic programming questions you have done, how many greedy questions you have done, how many try questions you have done. So try to diversify those, because you don't know what companies would be asking on which category, right? You cannot have one category as your core skill and others you just left it out, right? So it's really important to actually diversify and also track that which categories you are solving, and also improve upon those categories, right? Uh, Again, coming back to accuracy is really important in interview stage as well. One is your online assessment, where you would have probably an assessment test that you take within a couple of hours. So there also accuracy is a great measure that companies do. Another is one-on-one interviews. Also, accuracy is really important, because if the interviewer was supposed to ask two questions in half an hour and you were not able to solve the first question, you didn't basically make it through, right? So that's how accuracy is important, right? Another is learn to dry run your solution. So a lot of candidates which I interview, what if the environment supports running the code and executing the test cases, then they'll just directly click on run, right? Why they do that is, they don't want to take the effort of understanding that if their code is actually correct or not, right? But what I would recommend is, most of the companies do not have that execute functionality. For example, Google doesn't allow you to run the code. Google asks you to code on a Google Doc, where you don't have the indentation support as well, right? So in those scenarios, if you are not able to figure out that if there is an issue in your code, then most likely your selection won't happen, right? So these are some things that you need to keep in mind while you are working on your data structures and algorithm skills. Yeah, that's about data structures and algorithms. And let's move on to projects. In terms of projects, avoid writing common projects in your resume, right? In your resume, if you see, like, say, for example, a to-do application or a chat application, right? There are like thousands of students writing the same project in a resume, right? So for a recruiter, there is no differentiation for them to say that, okay, let's select this candidate, right? So I would suggest that use these common projects as your learning thing, but still work on projects which are not really like the standard ones, which you probably have copy pasted or a friend of yours have done, and you have just tried to build the same thing on your own. So that would help your resume shortlisting scene as well. Coming on to the learning part, so throughout your college, not even just first year and second year, throughout your college, your goal is to basically learn skills and concepts more clearly, right? If you basically learn skills, getting a job is not that hard. Getting a job is really easy once you are skilled at something, right? A lot of students ask me that, okay, I'm not from IIT, I'm not from triple IT. That's why my resume is getting not shortlisted, right? So that is something that I would say that a lot of startups or a lot of companies right now don't see the pedigree, right? Their pedigree is just a proxy of how good a student is. But if you have other relevant skills, other relevant projects that you have done, a company is more than happy to hire you because they just need skills. They don't want this person to be IIT from IIT or from NIT or so on and so forth, right? So your goal to get through the college is to learn skills and concepts more thoroughly, right? Uh, for example, if you're learning any technology or a framework or something which you want to, for example, say Django, React, Rails, so on and so forth, right? I would recommend that you implement end to end any platform that you're using in your daily lives, right? For example, Facebook, Instagram, Quora, YouTube, you are using every day, right? So you know what functionalities that need to be built, right? Once you do that, basically, once you figure out that, okay, you have to build Quora, then you can start learning about that technology, that how do you solve this thing in that particular technology, right? So for example, how do you create a database in this framework, right? How do you basically list uh, a list of posts or queries in a particular thing, right? So once you have a problem statement in mind, a lot of things becomes more exploratory, right? If you just go through each of these things in a way where you just read some tutorial or basically followed some YouTube video, it's not actually going to give you any learning, right? So this is what, and I would still recommend that don't put this in your resume, right? If you're putting this in your resume, you are again prone to being seen as you might have copy pasted the project from somewhere or something like that, right? This is purely for your learning, right? And from my experience, I have built stop stock when I was in third year, right? So now building stop stock was something which was like, I need to add this feature now. I need to support for scale. I need to change my database schema, right? All of those things, once I have a functionality in mind, it becomes much more exploratory learning that helps you in uh, learning these technologies as well as making some good projects in your resume, right? And as I mentioned, this is something that would tremendously help. If you have some idea of your own, it might be very small enhancement on a specific thing, right? For example, say Instagram started with say photos and videos, right? Something like that. If you can do something like that, which is minutely different from your usual things, that becomes something of your own, right? Once something is your own idea, your commitment to solving that problem becomes much higher, right? And this is not just good for your learning of technology, it's also good for discussions with hiring managers, right? Once you discuss anything which you have built on your own, hiring managers would be much more interested to talk to you about how you came to the idea, how you have been managing it, how you learned these things over the course of building this. So that helps you basically highlight your profile as well, right? So that's on this. And internships, as I said, most of the startups right now, there's a lot of startups, a lot of people also support internships, excluding the current market scenario. But usually there are lots of startups who are looking to build their product, and they are looking out for people who are skilled at, say, Node.js, skilled at React, so on and so forth, right? So if you have built some projects on your own, you would be a good resource for them. For them, it might be that it's easy building of that feature by lesser amount of stipend that they pay. But for you, it's a learning journey, right? If you have some internships in your resume, it highlights your profile very, very much to the recruiter as well as hiring managers. right? And yeah, so that's on the projects part. Coming on to the next phase where we actually are getting ready for placements, right? So this is highly relevant for uh, candidates who are right now in their second year, planning to get internships on campus or off campus in their third year, or in the third year who are still preparing for their uh, placements. I'll show you how you prepare for these drives, right? So before I show you that, I would suggest that you understand the funnel of these applications, right? A lot of companies right now, since there's a lot of shortage of these entry level jobs, any post that you see on LinkedIn, which is a job post, you would see at least 1,000 applications on that for entry level positions like internships, freshers, so on and so forth, right? I'll tell you how this works on the recruiter side, right? You are well aware of how to find these jobs and so on and so forth. Once you click on apply, what happens is what I'll tell you, right? Say there are 1,000 applications. Out of these 1,000, a recruiter usually doesn't go through each of these 1,000, right? Uh, a recruiter is also a human just like you, right? Now, if you are working somewhere, and this is just for one position I'm talking about, software engineering intern. But a recruiter might as well be working on a senior software engineer position. They might be working on a marketing manager position, so on and so forth, right? So you cannot expect a human to actually go through each of these 1,000 applications, right? So what usually recruiters do is, this is usual, right? A lot of companies have smartness around it. They might send assignments to each of these 1,000 people, or maybe they'll have some basic filtering of basic languages there in the resume or not, or something like that, right? But usually recruiters do that manually, and it's well there because recruiters are much more skilled on these particular things, right? Seeing the experience, seeing what companies that they have interned with, and so on. So, say 100 of them are basically reviewed by the team. These 100 are actually the resumes which were opened by the recruiter, right? Out of this, probably say 50 of them, the resume looks good to the recruiter, and recruiter will forward that to the hiring manager. Right now, the hiring manager is someone who's actually technical, right? Recruiter was not technical. Recruiter is just matching your keywords that, okay, I need a Java developer, so there should be Java, or probably the candidate might have done some Java projects or internships kind of thing. So recruiter does a basic level of screening, and then basically hiring manager does one more round of screening. Hiring manager might as well see your, say, lead code profile or GitHub profile, what internships you have done, what stack you have used, so on and so forth, right? So hiring manager digs a bit deeper into these. So out of these hiring manager would probably select these 10 candidates for interviewing, right? So these interviews are basically your data structures and algorithms interview, other hiring manager interview, behavioral interview, so on and so forth, right? And out of which probably say 3 of the candidates are offered, right? So this is like an internal picture of a company, how they operate on any particular position. This would help you understand making decisions, right? A lot of students I see, they do not focus on their resume enough, right? So in this funnel, if you see, uh, the resume is coming here at 100 at this second stage. Now, if you are not optimizing for this 100 to 51, you're not even reaching to your data structures and algorithms round. So your all the work that you're doing on lead code is really not going to be tested unless you fix your resume correctly, right? So let's understand that a bit better. This is just an overview of how things work, right? Now, as I said, each of these things are preparing for placement, right? Before even your companies are coming to a placement, you need to make sure that each of these things are checked, right? Now, the first one is spend a lot of time on your resume. Another is GitHub profile. So a lot of I'll share some tips on GitHub profile as well in the next slide. Next is basically finding jobs for applying, right? So right now, since there are a lot of lesser jobs for entry level position, it becomes really hard for you to really discover companies who are hiring, right? If you have on campus companies coming in, probably this might not be relevant for you. But if on campus is something that you want to still get a better offer outside, or probably you didn't get placed in on campus companies, you should try to find jobs where they're looking out for someone like you, right? And another is getting referrals, right? So how do you get referrals out of this? So all of these things are before even you start your recruitment process, right? So let me dive deeper in each of these. So Improving your resume involves a lot of steps. We have recently launched on Rexee's LinkedIn page. We have recently launched a lot of tips that we have figured out from our reviewing experience of hundreds of resumes. So one is you have to pick a template, right? If you are making a Google Doc resume and exporting it as PDF, it's almost likely that you're not going to be shortlisted, right? And picking a template is much more helpful because say you pick a template which is not very standard, right? Or you build your own template. A recruiter might not know that, okay, there is a project section somewhere in the top right or top left kind of thing, right? So that makes sure that if you have a template which is standard enough, here your goal is not to make the most unique resume, right? Your goal is to basically get shortlisted. It's like a binary decision. Either you get shortlisted or you don't get shortlisted, right? So you don't have to do any fancy images or fancy logos or something. You don't have to do that. Your goal is to basically communicate that your skill and at these levels and how you have worked in your past 4 years, right? So pick a template. Make sure that it is ATS friendly, right? So ATS, what is ATS? ATS is basically applicant tracking system. Almost 80 to 90% of companies use an ATS. Not all of them have a resume parsing capability, but the ones that do, what they do is basically the thousand resume problem, right? Once they have these thousand resumes, they actually convert those PDFs into like machine learning models and try to basically figure out that what's the text written in it and try to keyword match it, right? So for example, someone just wants people from IIT, so they'll probably put a filter on that ATS that, okay, I only want IIT candidates to come in to this funnel, right? I'm just giving you an example. Usually those are not on pedigree, those are mostly on skills, right? So they'll probably add Java and Python as the skill requirement if they have in the job description, right? Now, even after picking a template, there are a lot of chances that your resume is not ATS friendly. What do I mean by that is most of the ATS basically try to convert your PDF into a text and then do a text matching kind of thing, right? Now, there are a lot of tools online. If you just search for resume parser, you will find an online tool where you can upload your resume and find out that what all text are they able to parse from it, right? If you don't receive any text, that means your resume is not ATS friendly, right? So make sure that they are able to read your email correctly, they are able to read your phone number correctly, and they are able to read your skills correctly, right? At least this much they should be able to read. If that is checked, then most likely then it is another problem of your resume not being shortlisted or the recruiter not even opening the resume, right? So that is on the ATS friendly. Another is get feedback from your friends, right? This is something that most of the candidates don't do. Usually in college, the mindset of candidates is like, if I show my resume to someone, then they'll copy my resume and try to be the same as me, right? Usually that's not the mindset I would recommend you to have. What I would say is you create a resume and share it with your friends, share it with your 10 friends and put a Google form in it and say that, okay, rate my resume from 1 to 10 and make sure that you add some comments that, okay, if you're adding a 4 rating, also tell me why you're adding a 4 rating, right? And the friends would be happy to do this because they also probably want feedback on their resume, right? So try to do this activity, at least do it for 10 friends and try to see if they are scoring you on an average below 6 or above 6, right? If it is below 6, it's definitely likely that you should actually improve your resume, right? And above that, it's subjective based on the feedback that you receive on the Google form, right? And we have basically published 20 such guidelines actually on our LinkedIn page. I have linked it here. I'll be sharing this PDF so that you can review these links later, right? So this is on the resume part. The same is with GitHub profile, right? Now, this resume is most likely for the recruiter as well as the hiring manager. But GitHub profile most likely is for someone who's actually reviewing your profile with the mindset that they are also skilled on skills which are required in the job description, right? So what they try to gauge is what kind of projects you have done, what kind of activity on GitHub is there, so on and so forth, right? Now, a lot of candidates I see that they learn GitHub only in the third year or fourth year kind of thing, right? If you learn your GitHub in your fourth year, then you basically don't have any history from your first year, second year, third year contributing to any repository on GitHub, right? That makes any company think that probably this candidate just started their journey and probably just not that well versed with Git and GitHub, right? So sooner you start, the better. If you're in first year, better to learn Git. If you're in second year, better to learn Git. Any year that you're in, just get started, right? Open source contributions in your GitHub profile. If you have open source contributions in general to any repository which is online, right? Not just the major ones like say Python or Sahana or so on and so forth. Try to contribute to any repo of your friend that probably your friend is working on some interesting project and you can just ask them that, okay, can I also contribute to this? If you start contributing like this, only then you will learn Git and GitHub in the real sense, right? And if these contributions are there, only then the hiring manager would think that, okay, this person already knows Git and GitHub. I don't need to train this person. And let me tell you honestly, like most of the companies would assume Git to be known to the candidate. They would never teach you in a week's time that, okay, you have to learn these things, you have to do these small tasks to learn Git, right? Git is something which is very default in the industry and you have to basically be good at it, right? So why not learn it in the college, right? So open source contribution is a big thing that you can learn GitHub with, right? Another is make sure you have good commit messages. So people who already know what Git and GitHub means, commits is something would be known to them. So make sure that you have good commit messages. We have recently started a series on LinkedIn just to give you like what are the examples of good commit messages. You can check that out on our LinkedIn page as well. But yeah, these are just rough points that I want you to keep in mind while you are basically preparing for placement, right? While you are applying for companies, because this is something that is going to be reviewed for sure if you are at hiring manager screen, right? Add an informative README. So say you worked on a project, you built a very nice product, you showcased it, you probably deployed it somewhere as well, but you don't have any README there, right? So even if a recruiter is looking at your GitHub repository, recruiter will just see that, okay, what does this project actually do? Is it an Instagram? Is it a Quora? Is it what is it doing, right? Now, if you have written something in their README file, only then they would know that, okay, this candidate has worked on something which is really interesting, right? Only then they would understand what this is, right? So at least write what the project is. Also write some instructions how they can set up the repo and so on and so forth. And if possible, also add live links of each of these deployment. So if you have a website, you should actually deploy it on some website and then actually add that link in your README. That makes very easy for a recruiter to quickly see that how does the project look? Is it complicated enough that the candidate might have spent a lot of time to build that? And if it is very basic, probably they'll get that as a inference from there. Right. And as I said, a lot of these tips are already being published on a LinkedIn page, right? And this is just an example contributions graph. So basically, if your contribution graph looks something like this, most likely you will be not rejected from this GitHub screening kind of thing, right? And make sure that you are not faking it because GitHub is completely public. If you basically try to add only private contributions here, it's not adding any value to your profile, right? And say you are making every commit every day of one line of code, that is also something is going to only hurt you in the future, right? It's not going to work if you start sort of going around the process, right? Is actually genuinely, if you're doing some open source contributions or making your own project, make sure you add it on your GitHub. Any tricking here is only going to hurt you in the future, right? Now coming to how to find jobs which are worth applying, right? So let me again minimize my screen and show you. So Google also has a jobs page, right? This is not for jobs which are for Google. This is a jobs page for the companies which are hiring for a particular job, right? For example, say you are hiring, you are looking out for internship jobs, right? So you just search that, and they have lots of filters here that would help you basically shortlist what kind of companies you are looking at. You can also kind of add a company type if you are inclined towards say working on healthcare companies, so on and so forth, right? So try to get to these jobs from Google, and there are other ways also. So, for example, LinkedIn also has a similar job search page, right? So where you can basically select some filters and try to figure out that okay, what are the kind of jobs are there, what are the requirements here, and you can directly apply here, right? So this is another way to look for jobs. Another is Reczee Talent Hub. So I haven't briefed you about Reczee, but let me quickly do that right now. So Reczee Talent Hub is also a job board kind of thing where companies basically list their position and they specify what requirements they want, right? So for example, Python, SQL, data structures and algorithms. These are the requirements. Now, what we do it differently here is in Rexy, you can't click on apply until you actually match the requirements, right? In these job boards, what happens is when you apply here, you actually go to that dump of 1,000 resumes or 1,000 applications, right? But with Rexy Talent Hub, what happens is since we have already validated these skills from our end, only a few applicants would reach the recruiter, right? And our recruiters, the recruiters that we have partnered with, all of those recruiters are onboarded in a way where they have to review each of these applicants at least once, right? So that it makes sense for the candidate also to apply in this fashion, as well as for companies, they are only getting say 5-10 candidates who are already skilled on these things, right? So for them also, instead of reviewing all of these 1,000 applications, for them it's getting easier to really shortlist to that offer that they are trying to roll out, right? So here also you can follow the jobs, and we are adding more and more jobs every day. Right? So that is on that. And find jobs worth applying is also for internships. So these are not actual listings of the internships, but if you reach out to founders who are very early stage, probably say 10-15 member team, they would have a lot of work on their head, right? So they would have some say data science work, they would have some marketing work, they would have some UI work, so on and so forth, right? So you can just shoot out a message to them, and if they don't reply, that's fine. If they don't reply, that's fine. But it's more of a cold outreach that you're doing across multiple founders who might be interested in hiring something like that, right? Focus on learning. Don't I would still recommend don't in your college level don't go for money, right? Money you will earn after 4 years. You'll definitely earn a lot of money, right? But what I'll say is focus on learning. If you have learned enough, you will have enough jobs for you in the market for you to ace there, right? Uh, Coming to getting referrals, right? A lot of companies, when they list their positions, they value referrals of their internal employees, right? So if their internal employees are probably recommending a candidate, they have already done their due diligence before referring that candidate, right? So for this, I would recommend that LinkedIn is the best source. You can directly open the company page, and basically once you have opened the company page, you can see all the employees there. I would recommend that you can also look out for seniors, friends, and relatives, what companies they are working for, what kind of. These are people who are already connected with you in a particular sense, right? They might have your contact number, they might have your LinkedIn, so on and so forth, right? So these are most likely to refer you because they know you personally, right? Uh, on top of this, there's also like cold outreach, which is again, you are reaching out to random people who really don't know you. So I would recommend you to reach out to folks who are really in 1 to 5 years of experience, right? Why this range is because uh, referrals also have a bonus for them. There's an incentive for them also to refer a candidate, which actually gets converted to a full-time offer, right? So usually this range is highly active on LinkedIn for looking out for referrals to do, and they can probably have a better response rate as well. If you probably message a director of engineering and say that, okay, please refer me, they're not going to spend that time to actually refer you or even open your resume to refer you, right? So try to stick to this range while you are looking out for whom to reach out, right? And it's a numbers game, right? It's like, do you know how sales work? It's like that, right? In sales, you basically reach out to 100 people, out of which probably 10 would reply to you, right? And probably two of them would probably get into a meeting with you. Similar to that, referrals is also the same, right? If a lot of these people might not be active on LinkedIn also, right? You just searched on LinkedIn and message them, but they might not open LinkedIn ever, right? So if you have a lot of messages that you have already shot, only then your chances of getting a response is going to increase, right? And try to not poll too much. If you poll too much, it just becomes a negative vibe for that person as well. So try to have only two follow-ups You try to space it out within a week or a couple of weeks and stop after that. If they don't respond, probably they are not going to respond in the future, right? So try to not go over two follow-ups, right? Coming to the last section, which is ace the process, right? All of these things were before you getting an interview, before you talking to anyone from the company. Now let's see that once you are shortlisted, what is the process like, right? So usually there would be these four steps. There might be more, less based on how the company operates, based on where they're coming. If they're coming in an on-campus environment, probably they'll have a different format here. But usually there will be these four steps, right? Introductory call is basically a recruiter will be able to gauge that is the candidate good enough for us to even interview or even talk to, right? So this introductory call is roughly for 10-15 minutes. Recruiter will just tell you about the company and probably also ask your inclinations, why you want to join the company, what kind of skills are you skilled at, what was your internship experience, so on and so forth, right? This is a really overview kind of discussion. They are just trying to gauge a mutual fit, a yes or no binary decision here, right? So here basically the first thing is you need to know what the company does, right? I understand you would be applying to at least 20 to 30 companies at a particular time, but you need to know what a company does before this introductory call happens, right? If there is a call scheduled tomorrow, you have to research about the company today without fail, what the company does, what is the probably how many employees are there, what kind of product they have. You can probably also try out the product. If you have these kind of things already ready, you can have much more mature discussion with the recruiter saying that, okay, I checked your this product, how is the roadmap, right? How's the roadmap for this, so on and so forth, right? So it becomes much more easier once you know what the company does, right? In my past experience, some of the companies which I reached out for Reczee Talent Hub, a lot of candidates had applied to a company from Reczee Talent Hub, and they don't even know that they had applied for this company, right? That's a pure red flag for any person who's involved in the process, right? They don't care what kind of skills you bring to the table. If you don't know what the company does, is going to hurt your shortlisting process, right? Read the job description, because a lot of times what happens is these 1,000 applications that a company has received, almost definitely only 50 or 60 people are actually skilled on the things which are written in the job description, right? So if you are not skilled on those job description, for example, say I'm a web developer and I've never opened a Android studio, and if I'm applying on an Android developer intern position, it just makes things bad, right? And if you have an introductory call with a recruiter at that point in time, it just makes things awkward, right? So don't get into those positions once uh, you have applied to a position, right? Another thing is resume. Basically, recruiters would try to ask you that what was the internship duration, what work did you do, so on and so forth, right? If you have not read what you have written in resume concretely, if you don't know what you have written in resume concretely, this is the time that you prepare before the introductory call, right? If they get a sense of not knowing anything in the resume, or if they have a commitment kind of thing where uh, the project you have listed but you don't know anything about the project, right? So that's something that will hurt you in the introductory call, right? During the call, what you should do is, as I said, you should communicate a concrete reason why you want to join the company. If it's a startup, if it's a multinational company, you should basically have some answer of why you need to join the company. And it's going to help you basically make an impression with the recruiter. This recruiter is going to be with you across all the rounds, right? So if you have a good rapport with the recruiter, they might have uh, sort of streamline your process much further, because they also want to close the position as soon as possible, right? So if you are responsive enough in your throughout the journey, it will help you in your closing process, right? And whenever you're giving an introduction, try to only stick to keywords and impactful information that you have in your resume, right? If you start and take 10 minutes of the call just explaining about yourself, it's going to be bad, because the recruiter also doesn't want to hear a lot of things, because the recruiter is not really interested in those minute details where you explain that, okay, you applied auto scaling in AWS and so on and so forth to improve these things, right? So try to Keep it relevant, keep it overview fashion, and try to include only the impactful information in the introductory part, right? And introduction, as I said, do this practice with your friends, do this practice with your seniors, do this practice with your family members, right? This introduction needs to be at least 60 seconds and not more than probably 2 minutes, right? And that's something that you have to make sure that you cover everything that you have done in terms of internships, experience, projects that you have done, and what you are looking for in the role, right? So try to have a short, crisp introduction that you are really good at giving, right? Coming to assignments, a lot of companies give you assignments to work on. Probably they'll have a 24-hour or 48-hour timeline till when you have to submit assignment. Usually, candidates don't acknowledge an assignment, right? This is the biggest turn off for a recruiter, right? Because say the recruiter is at a stage where they have found those 20 people that they want to interview. Out of these 20, also from real world numbers, I'm saying only probably 60 or 70% respond with an assignment, right? And that is also on a conservative side, right? So what I'm saying is you need to acknowledge if you're working on the assignment, right? If you start ghosting the recruiter, if recruiter is not going to have that knowledge that okay, this candidate is good or this candidate is actually active in responding to or interested in applying for the company, right? So whenever you receive an assignment, try to reply with a thank you message. We'll be working on it. We'll send you this assignment by tomorrow, so on and so forth, right? Try to acknowledge that. Once you are done with the assignment, they'll probably ask you to share a GitHub link or a zip file or so on and so forth. Make sure you have a README, right? This README is not for recruiters. Recruiters are not going to read the code in this assignment. The actual reviewer, which is probably a senior software engineer or a hiring manager who's going to review this, is going to read the README and probably set it up as well, right? If they are interested in actually going forward with you, they probably might want to check that if the code is actually working or not, right? So they might have to do this, and at this point in time, if they don't find a instruction there, they are not going to figure it out on their own, right? They only have like probably 5 minutes to evaluate one candidate, right? So in that 5 minutes, if you ask them to figure out the dependencies that you want in the project, if you want to figure them out that how Django runs, so on and so forth, they're not going to do it. And they're not going to go with the loop saying that hiring manager would reach out to recruiter, recruiter will reach out to you, and then you'll update the README and then again send back. Usually that is not the case. They'll just drop the assignment altogether. Regardless of how your code quality is, how good you have done the assignment, so on, right? So please add a README. Most assignments right now in usual assignments, if there are a web development or a app kind of assignments, they usually don't ask you to design like fancy UI where there's proper flow of each of these things. They'll just see the functionality and how you have worked with it, right? Unless the position that you're applying for is a UI developer position or something like that, right? So try to focus on the functionality and don't waste a lot of time in building fancy UI, because a lot of these assignments are first come first serve, right? As I said, out of these 20, probably 10 would reply, and 10 would probably 5 would respond with the assignment within 6 hours, right? So then if these outside of these 5, if they are able to close any candidate, they're probably not going to look at the other 5 people who are submitting after a day or two, right? So try to optimize on the time you spent on say building fancy UI and so on and so forth, right? Another is please include a live deployment link. If it's a website or if it's an app, you should include a screenshot or videos of each of these things. This makes sure that your first level of screening, which recruiter probably does, is sorted, right? Once the recruiter sees that okay, the functionality is working, they'll just forward it to the hiring manager, and probably your process would get started, right? So for hiring manager also, this step, as I said, a lot of hiring managers or senior software engineers or whoever is evaluating are not going to set up this assignment locally, right? They want to see the end functionality, and then they'll open specific files on your code that okay, how this functionality is written, so on and so forth. They'll probably not set it up and try to run it on your local on their local machine, right? So try to include these. These are like quick wins for the candidate as well as for the hiring manager, right? And first come first serve, as I said, it's always good to respond with the assignment as soon as possible, because most of the companies, since the volume is very high, you don't want to wait it out. You made it to the assignment stage, that's that itself is a really good stage to be in. Don't lose that opportunity, right? So that's on the assignment phase. Coming on to the DSA interview. So DSA interview is basically you have to basically explain the approaches that are there in your mind. And a lot of candidates who I interview is what they try to do is they'll start with an exponential solution, then they'll come to n cube, then they'll come to n square, then they'll come to order n solution, because they have read those solutions that way on lead code or geeks for geeks and so on and so forth, right? Almost always that's not going to be any brownie points for doing that, right? You are not actually optimizing on these solutions, you are actually just remembering and giving out those solutions, right? Try to just give like two approaches. If you already know the most optimal approach, that's fine. You can also communicate that okay, this is the optimal approach which I can think of. If you start with something which is non-optimal and the interviewer asks you that okay, think around a bit more and try to figure out a more optimal solution, that's when you try to brainstorm and try to come up with the approaches, right? But not more than two. I would recommend not more than two, because that wastes your 30 minutes of time, right? So in a 30-minute interview, if you have to solve a two questions in 30 minutes, if you waste 2 minutes in that, it just wastes a lot of time during the interview, right? And do not make any syntax issues. This has to come with practice. If you have done enough code chef, code forces, lead code, you would not be making this. But if you make this, it's usually not really good. A lot of interviews don't involve executing the code, but still you should make sure that since the interviewer knows the syntax very well, you are not going to get any good points for not remembering the syntax, right? Um, as I said before, don't run your code if there is a functionality in the interview where you can actually run the code and test it out if your code is working. Try to basically quickly dry run your code. By quickly, I mean, again, optimize for your time that you're spending everywhere, right? Dry run should still be an overview, not like properly taking 10 test cases and trying to run each of them and then telling the interviewer that, okay, I'm done with the solution, right? Try to do a quick dry run and then communicate to the interviewer that, okay, I think this should work, and then see what the interviewer responds with, right? Another thing is a lot of candidates, when they get stuck on a particular test case not passing, what they try to do is, okay, probably this for loop is the issue. Okay, probably this if condition is the issue, right? That probably doesn't work in, it's just like maths, right? In maths, if you are solving a big equation kind of thing, you cannot do a trial and error kind of approach there and solve things, right? You have to actually see output of each of these things, right? So try to basically put log lines as soon as possible. If the interviewer allows you to execute the code and figure out what's the error, try to put log lines as your first step to debug anything, right? Put a log line in the if condition, put a log line in the looping that you're doing. So that would help you quickly triage what issue you're doing. And this is not just for the interview, this is also in general debugging as a one-on-one debugging. So whenever you're debugging something, it's always best either you put a debugger there or you put a log line there to figure out where the error is, right? Next is thinking out loud. You might have heard this multiple times. This really helps. Why? Because one is your communication is tested here. Another is thought process that you're thinking. Probably you're thinking too fast, which might be a good thing for the interviewer to understand that, okay, this candidate can think very fast. But if you don't communicate that, then it's just in your mind, right? So make sure that you communicate the thought process. And what it helps is also in course correction. So the interviewer wants you to succeed, right? The interviewer wants to hire you, right? But if you don't give them enough information about where you are stuck, then basically you're wasting your time, and eventually the answer is going to be no, right? So thinking out loud and listen to the interview. This is something that I don't know. This is so basic an advice. A lot of people give this advice, but candidates fail to follow this, right? So what candidates miss out on is interviewer knows where you're making the mistake, right? They know the exact line number. Maybe you are so nervous that you might have missed a very basic error. The interviewer knows that, okay, probably line number 9 and 10 is something issue, right? So interviewer will give you hints sort of that, okay, probably something's wrong with your while loop, right? If they tell you this, then don't look outside of that while loop. This is most likely the case that something is wrong with the while loop. they are not guessing. They are actually giving you those hints, right? So take those hints and try to make sure that you ace on those aspects, right? And clarifications and questions you should definitely ask to make sure that you are on the right path on what the interviewer is expecting, right? And the last interview that we'll be talking about is, and the last slide I said, is the hiring manager interview. So this usually is someone who's probably at a engineering manager level or probably at a staff software engineer level, who's going to evaluate a bit more about your personality and also dig a bit deeper into what kind of projects you have worked on, experience, what are your interests outside of your projects, so on and so forth, right? So they'll try to gauge this from your uh, explanations, and what they are trying to gauge is at a fresher level, usually after your 4 years, you will be moldable in a way where whichever will be your first company, you will try to get into that kind of mindset, right? So what they want to do is this candidate very rigid in their thought process? Are they going to not work on the task that I give them, right? Are they going to not learn at all if I give them a new task, right? So learnability is what they look for, which is what moldable is also. So that is something that a good trait would come out in a hiring manager interview, and they'll probably account that in their evaluations, right? And as I said, more work that you do outside of your coursework that shows your geekiness, that shows your commitment to the field that you're working at. That makes sure that hiring manager also feels confident that okay, this person would be able to do something outside of what I give them, or think out of the box, or think about more ideas which can probably be brought into the work that they are also doing, right? And leverage the job description. We discussed this before as well for the introductory call. This leveraging job description is going to actually help you in terms of hiring manager understanding that will you be a right fit for his team, right? His or her team. Why so? Because the job description would usually have a particular uh, team in mind while they are posting the job, right? So they'll have, say, an analytics team, they'll have, say, web team kind of thing. So the job description would have these signals and try to basically uh, ask some questions around these areas, right? So this is the ending part where whenever a hiring manager closes the interview, they'll usually ask, "Do you have any questions for me?" At least ask one question, right? One is at the minimum. If you ask two, that's the ideal, I would say. At least ask one well-researched question. It can be something in the product that you have tried from their free trial. It can be something from the job description. It can be something from their LinkedIn page that they might have mentioned that, okay, this is our roadmap for the next year, so on and so forth, right? If you have this thing, then for hiring manager, the last thing that they'll have in their mind that, okay, this candidate has researched something and they're actually inclined to join our company, right? So these are some things that would actually help you uh, optimize on your chances of getting the job offer that you're looking for, right? So yeah, I have covered most of the things. Just some action items for you. You can create a Reczee Talent Hub profile, which I showed you as a jobs page, right? So I can show you the profile page as well. So just like a resume, you can add some basic information here, your job preferences, experience, projects, so on and so forth, and you can add your skills. And what Reczee does is you can also validate those skills by taking these assessments, right? So once you have taken these assessments, your profile looks uh, something like this, that you have verified these skills on Reczee, right? So any job that you apply to, the recruiters would be able to see that apart from these four, also you have taken more assessments and you are skilled on, say, if someone is looking at software engineering intern, but they also have a full stack of engineering intern position open, they'll see probably that, okay, you also have React as a skill. So they might optimize on your uh, or move your application to the full stack engineering intern, right? So you can create a profile on Reczee Talent Hub. Resume, as I mentioned, we have released 20 tips, which are really actionable insights on how you can improve your resume right now, and you can review these. I'll share this PDF so that you can click on these links and try it out. And there's also a GitHub profile tips that we have recently started. So we are releasing one tip every day, which will help you improve your GitHub profile as well. This is just basically follow Reczee on each of these platforms, and If you like the content, probably you can also tag us if you have a post which you are doing. And we are also doing resume reviews for as a personal thing. So if you want to get a resume review over a call from a person, you can schedule it from this link. And we are also taking data structures and algorithms interview for you to. So here, if you see, these are MCQs that you have passed, right? So MCQs probably uh, they are not very much deep into what questions are asked, but these are three badges that we actually provide after taking an interview, right? So Reczee experts are basically professionals from Google, Microsoft, LinkedIn, top product companies, and they'll basically take your interview and gauge from that you are a beginner, intermediate, and expert. So once you get these badges, and when you apply any of these jobs, your profile would be much more highlighted in terms of since you are already skilled at data structures and algorithms, they might fast process your uh, application across these companies, right? So that would help you there. And yeah, I guess I've covered most of the things. We can move on to the questions section. Hope this was helpful, Shriram.
It was very helpful, and we have generally we have a lot of questions, but I
Yeah.
think the students are spellbound by your talk that they are typing the questions. So generally, we have a lot of questions.
Okay. Okay.
So some of the questions that have come, dear
Yeah.
students, I'm going to try to focus on the more relevant questions that are for this. Whilst Smarani Basu's question is, while solving for problems in lead code, if I find the time complexity of my code is not good, should I refer to the code that has the least execution time and not bother about what I've done previously?
So I would recommend what the process should look like is you solve the problem on your own first, and you'll probably get a time limit exceeded on your lead code, or probably still get your code accepted. But you should always look at the discuss section, right? Their most voted question would have like multiple ways of solving the problem, right? Even if you don't solve it, at least have a look that probably an n square solution can be an n log n solution as well, right? If you have that in your mind, it will make sure that in the interviews you have that approach in your mind that okay, n square is probably not that good. I should look for something where I can sort things or probably use a binary search and optimize this code further, right? It's just a mindset that comes with more practice. So once you solve a problem on lead code, do check out the solution, do see that what kind of solutions that they have proposed. If you understand that solution, you can skip submitting it again. But if you are probably not sure, then you should again get to that thing that I mentioned, that you should actually understand that solution and solve it on your own again, right? So that helps you solve multiple kinds of problem solutions, which are also what you do in interviews, right? So yeah, hope I answered the question.
Yes, that is a very good answer. Uh, Ashwin Kumar's question is, should we do the maximum number of internships that we can, including technical out-of-domain internships, or should we focus on the internships to the career domain I am focusing on? Uh,
Uh, Yeah, I would suggest it depends on what stage you are at right now. So if you are probably in third or fourth year, I would say you won't have that much time that you can do outside of your career kind of internships, because these internships actually take time. And since you are also in college, there would be some commitments as well, right? So if you have enough time and you can probably spend that, and the internship is probably say part-time kind of internships, do take it out. But usually try to stick to what kind of jobs you're looking out for, it. You should explore on your own that, okay, your interests are in Android, your interests are in, say, iOS development, so on and so forth, by just learning on things online and try to focus on going for those internships. Sometimes you don't get those internships which are very niche. For example, say iOS internship. I don't see a lot of jobs for internships there, but you should try to basically stick to that domain if you have lesser amount of time. Right? So yeah.
so the next question is, I work on a lot of my personal projects and I have more number of private contributions on GitHub than open source contributions. Will that be considered as a negative point for the recruiter?
So not for the recruiter actually. It's just that even if you're doing that private contributions, uh, there's not enough proof on your GitHub saying that okay, you have made those contributions, right? Because GitHub doesn't show you uh, what kind of contributions that you have done, right? So I would say still have some kind of projects that you do on your own. And in your resume, you can still mention that we are working on this stealth project, or we are working on this project which we are not open sourcing the code of, and something like that you can mention in your resume. And then probably I would still suggest to have it public, because in your college level, usually if you're not working for a startup, you should have all your projects public. Even my projects are on my GitHub are public. Sometimes I'm embarrassed by my code quality as well, but I would still recommend have some of the uh, GitHub projects open, so that that helps recruiter also to uh, decide on something.
Sahil's question is, if I publish my application on Play Store or let's say any website, and will the number of downloads or analytics help to get outshined across others?
Yeah, definitely. If you have a live project, as I mentioned, right, for my experience, in my third year, I launched Stock, and if I remember, at that time there were around 1,000 users, right? So that became a discussion point in the hiring manager interview, right? That okay, how did you handle DNS? How did you handle scaling of these applications? How did you handle email sending kind of thing? So if you have anything which is out there and you have something to showcase, definitely put it on your resume. Definitely sort of shout it out in your LinkedIn and try to get enough traction to the number of downloads and other thing. And that number would definitely help. It's not going to uh, basically it's going to only add more to your resume.
And dear students, if you look at what we have told in our contributions here in VIT Bhopal, if you have a published app on Play Store, we will actually account for that in your placement journey. And we will encourage you to do that. So apps on Play Stores is welcome.
Definitely.
Should I put all my projects on the resume, or should I focus and limit the number of projects that I did? Is it's a
You should only put. I would recommend, like, if you have internships also, try to stick to like 2 internships, 2 or 3 internships maximum. And projects also, I would recommend 3 to 4 projects. If you don't have any experience, which is like say real world company experience sort of thing, then you can probably stretch a bit on your number of projects, probably 5 or 6. But don't put all of them, right? Usually you won't have all of those projects. Usually people need to put course projects to just showcase that they don't have enough side projects. So uh, in those cases where you have a lot of side projects which are more relevant than your course projects, only then try to put those projects. Or you can do a combination of projects which are relevant, as well as course projects also, which you are applying for, right? And one more thing which I forgot to mention in the resume slide is it's completely okay to customize your resume for a particular position, right? So for example, say you're applying for an NLP internship kind of thing, right? Where you have done some course projects on NLP, or you have done some side projects on NLP. But since you have a lot more non-NLP projects, you will probably have only those projects in your resume. And this resume usually stays the same for all the candidates, right? I would recommend them to spend that time to have multiple versions of your resume before you apply to any company, right? So if you have that, it just increases your chances of getting shortlisted, right? So for an NLP internship, you will try to highlight NLP as your core skill while you're applying. So yeah, that helps.
okay. One of the questions of the student, I don't want to name the student, almost two approaches are good for answering a problem, but sometimes we are able to crack only the naive approach. Will the recruiter give another chance?
Uh, is this voice recruiter involved? Is it like a data structures and algorithms round that you are mentioning?
DSA round, DSA round. Only
DSA
the
round,
brute
right?
force
So
approach, they are able to crack. What is that a negative thing?
yeah, usually brute force approach is something that won't be accepted mostly in each of these companies. Sometimes the interviewer would tell you that I'm looking for a working solution first and optimal later, right? A lot of companies probably just weigh in on how optimal your solution is. Some of the companies weigh in on the candidate should be first be able to solve the problem with one method and then iterate on it, right? So usually when you solve a brute force approach, the interviewer would nudge you to optimize on it and give you probably some hints where you can optimize on, and then you can basically think around those lines. But usually, if there is a order n login solution and you're stuck at order n square, usually that is not a good signal for the interview, right? So it depends on how much volume of candidates they are processing. So if they have enough good candidates which are solving n log n very easily, they might not shortlist you. So it's very subjective based on companies, what kind of questions they are asking, and what feedback the interviewer is giving while in the interview, right? So usually they'll try to nudge you to go outside of brute force.
Okay, and that comes from practice, so don't worry too much. I'm an iOS developer and I develop iOS app for iPhones. Is it important to publish apps on App Store because Apple charges a lot for Apple charges for apps?
Yeah, I think they charge $100 or something. But yeah, I guess that is fine then. You should not worry too much about publishing it on App Store. Even if you have like a GitHub project, as I mentioned in one of the slides, you should have a GitHub project. You should have some screenshots or a YouTube demo video kind of thing where you showcase those skills, right? So that's as good as a validation that you have worked on that project and you are skilled on iOS development, right? So that's something that's not usually like when you publish on Play Store and App Store, the downloads become one more metric for them to track, right? But if not, well and good. Go with the README and a screenshot and a video kind of thing.
How important are hackathons in the recruitment process?
Hackathons are actually decently important. They are important only when probably you have some mentionable projects or mentionable achievements that you have done in the hackathons, right? So if you say participated in some hackathon, it doesn't give you anything, right? A lot of people write participated in ICPC, right? Participation is not going to award you anything, right? Especially in your achievement section, you can write something where you have probably say won some hackathons or say there was a prize attached to a hackathon. So that sort of signals that okay, you actually came on top of that leaderboard, right? So that signals a good view. But if you write just 5 hackathons that you have participated in, that's not going to help you in the resume screening process.
This is more for Mike's sake rather than the students. Three projects all in different domains or in similar domains?
Uh, it really depends actually. It's like if you have all of those three that you want to mention, then please go ahead. But I would still recommend that if you have enough other content apart from that, try to personalize your resume when you're applying to a position there, right? So if you have a NLP project for a full stack engineer internship, it's just blocking your space in the resume, right? If you have some good other projects which are in full stack, even if when they are not really that good projects, try to link those instead of say NLP project, right? Usually they don't, they're just extra space which is eating up your resume. So yeah.
Sir, I've been doing DSA for the past 2 months. I'm able to do the easy questions. When it comes to medium and hard, I'm able to figure out the algorithm, but I might not able to code it. So at some interview, can just explaining the algorithm to the interviewer work out?
Usually it depends on the company because they have a matrix, right? That okay, on these points, because for interviewer also they need to objectify things, right? If interviewer also gives subjective answers, it's not going to help the company. So they have a matrix usually where they tell that okay, out of these 2 questions, they should be able to solve one optimally and one probably a brute force solution, right? So that's really subjective based on that. But in general, for your approach, don't be worried that you're not able to solve medium and hard level of questions. Keep practicing, and it's just part of the process, right? Even if you see any good coders in your batch, in their probably first or second year, they'll be at the same stage as you, right? So it just depends on how much effort that you put to uh, get to that stage where you have practiced enough number of questions where you can solve these questions easily, right? So it's just practice. There's no rocket science basically where one person can do it and another person can definitely not do it. It's just practice. Just how maths is, I would say.
Does portfolio website matter?
It definitely does. It definitely does in terms of uh, showcasing your skills much more better. So, resume is a very limited. A lot of companies only prefer one page resume, right? Even I would say you should only have one page resume to really showcase what you are doing, right? So, in that one page resume, usually you don't get enough room to put all the projects that you have done, all the experiences that you have, skills that you have, so on and so forth, right? So, portfolio website does help, but it's not a binary factor for sure. If someone doesn't have a portfolio website, you won't be rejected just for that, basically. But it does add on to uh, just showcase that okay, you spend some time and effort to really create a portfolio website of yours. Yeah.
So how did you start your entrepreneurship journey? What are the challenges that you faced?
Yeah, I would say a lot of challenges. So I started in January this year. Uh, One is being a solo founder, it becomes a challenge in terms of handling the marketing, the sales, uh, the development of the product, reaching out to customer, providing customer support, so on and so forth. Right. So that is one challenge. Another is learning these skills on the fly. Usually, you are used to learning it once you have some project or something that you have in mind, right? So sales and other things are more subjective in nature, and it's a learning journey throughout. So yeah, for me, it has been a learning journey throughout, and crazy at times as well. When you have like uh, a bug on production, when you have some delivery that you have to give to the customers, when you have to get more customers, there's some finance issue to look out for. So yeah, it's a crazy journey, but definitely a lot of ups and downs there.
You
Yeah.
can simplify that for you. We have all the lions of VIT Bhopal ready to join you in that journey, and that becomes easier. So
Yeah, definitely.
you will find students all across India, but you won't find the kind of lions that we have. Anyways,
Yeah,
I'm just
definitely.
doing my bit. Anyway, Ashfia Khan's question, which is one of the last questions that we're going to take, is how to be consistent while doing DSA.
Uh, I'll tell you my motivations when I was doing or when I was in college, right? I'll tell you how I started, right? Everything is in public, so you can dissect things and hold me accountable. So if you see these contributions, right? These green squares were something which were really motivating for me, at least, to see that okay, I have a streak of 5 green dots, regardless of the contributions, right? If you open some of these contributions, probably they are not really that great. There are some issues that I've reported. There might be some small README fixes that might have done, right. So these kind of tracking of your progress would help you understand that are you actually committed to what you're doing to, right. So this is what my GitHub looks like. Same is what how I started StopStock as well. So with StopStock also I can track my own progress, right? So this is something when I was in college, I was decently active, but now that I'm working, I was not probably working on these things, right? So these kind of metrics which try to guide you that okay, you are going in an upwards direction or a downwards direction. It kind of helps you keep you motivated. In StopStock, actually, we also have a rating mechanism in a way where your rating actually decreases if you don't keep on solving problems every day, right? So you'll see till here it was actually increasing, right, till 2016 or so. After that, since I've stopped solving any problems, my rating formula is such that it hurts you if you don't solve problems, right? So, and if you keep on solving problems, your rating actually increases, right? So it just rewards you enough to keep being motivated and solve more questions on those things, right? So try to track your journey, what kind of questions you're solving, what kind of uh, this is more of a structured approach, basically, if you had to say, put it in a single word, that try to track your metrics and try to improvise on what the number is, right? So that helps, I guess.
Uh, there's one last question, which is a reflective question that we ask all the interviewers. What
Huh.
advice would you give your younger self if you were to meet Raj Patel of first year or second year, 2 years to go, 1 year to go? What advice would you tell Raj Patel what to do and what not to do?
Uh, that's an interesting question. One, definitely in terms of college, I would recommend to do things outside of your coursework. It's just it's unfortunate, but it's also pretty good a learning, right? In your 11th and 12th standard, probably you would have realized that it's a process, right? You have to follow these things consistently to really get better at it, right? So in my college days, I probably got much more active outside of coursework towards the end of second year or so, right? Uh, I would recommend to try exploring a lot of other sort of things outside of the coursework that would help figure out that you are interested in doing this much more concretely. That is, I guess, one advice. Apart from that, what I would recommend not to do. Uh, I don't know. It's just the market has been very different with current scenario versus when I was in college. Uh, but right now, I would recommend at least to you that keep on applying to positions. Right now, it's really a numbers game. You have to not get demotivated if you get rejections. If there are 50 rejections, there would be a 51st company which would hire you, right? So keep on applying, keep on improving. Try to make sure that you actually learn out of a rejection, right? If you know that, okay, probably resume was something which was bad, if you get some feedback from the interviewer, if you get some feedback from the recruiter, try to actually work on that for the next application, because if you're not doing that, then probably that 51st company might be 71st for you, right? So in your benefit, you should actually uh, keep on applying. I'm not sure how I came to this, but uh, this is something that which I missed as well for this talk. But yeah, I guess hope this helped to the students as well, to the Lions.
Uh, we have always one person who asks questions at the end, and that was a very interesting question. Sudanva's question is, I am applying for a generic software intern position. I have projects in diversified domains. I don't know which project to select. Can I put from the diversified positions? It's a software intern position. What should I
Mm-hmm.
do? Should I kind of follow some order similar projects or put all the diversified projects and increase my funnel?
I think diversifying won't help here. It's mostly like you'll be able to open the job description and see what kind of requirements they have, right? So if they have, say, probably say HTML, CSS, JavaScript is what their requirements have. Usually they're looking for a front end kind of intern, right? So usually, eventually, once you join the company, it might be the case that you start working on back end there, right? But there is no generic software engineer position. Usually there would be a requirement section which would tell you that these are the requirements that they're looking out for, right? So try to match your projects that you're applying for with that job description. So that
And even
that
the
should help.
company profile also gives some indicators as well. So the company
Yeah,
profile and what projects they work on give some indicators. So one
right.
last question, Raj. Again,
Yeah.
there's a question that came last. I want
Yeah.
to apply for a specialized position of blockchain and Web3. Uh, what and I'm very interested in that. Should I go for that specialized position, or should I diversify my approach?
No, I guess
In the
when you are in college, you should definitely try to learn as many things as possible. Try to do front end, try to do Android, try to do blockchain, whatever kind of projects interest you. Once you have figured out what kind of jobs you are looking out for, you can try to apply to those jobs and probably say blockchain, there are not enough internships right now, or say there are not enough fresher jobs right now. You can always switch later, right? It's not a very hard truth that you have to stick with whatever you joined with, right? So if you, even if you join as a, say, front end developer, and in the future if you want to really switch to a blockchain kind of profile, usually people keep doing that, right? People move from front end to back end, people move from back end to product management, so on and so forth, right? So don't treat it as a very rigid choice that you're making right now, but try to find jobs which you have already find interest with, right? As one of the person told that they've already worked on an iOS app, and they want to continue with that. So probably prefer applying to those positions first, and then go to the other positions, which are probably say Android or full stack kind of thing, right? So that's something that I can say for that.
Okay. Raj Patel, it's been a wonderful series of 1 month of interesting conversations, and I hope to have this conversation again and again with you in LinkedIn, in
Definitely,
messages, and in person as well someday, inshallah.
definitely.
We are coming to the end of the session. This is not the end of the session between you and VIT Bhopal. We are very, very glad that you took the time out, and this is just the beginning of our association. And I'm sure our lines will be associated with you for years to come and decades to come in some way or another. So, with all the gratitude and the pleasure that I have, I wish to thank you. In fact, Raj, one of my mails to students was that this is going to be a wonderful word called inflection point.
Yeah,
Inflection
yeah.
point is a point of time in life where their life can change, and that's how much I regard you, Raj Patel. So thank you for this. Your closing remarks.
Yep. Thanks a lot, Sriram, for hosting me. Actually, this is one of the first sessions I'm taking, and I'm planning to do these with multiple colleges. I had a previous interaction with a couple of universities, but they still haven't decided on a slot. But this is something that I really wanted to do. Both of my parents are teachers. I'm very humbly accepting their inheritance, and also saying that I'm really good at teaching, and I want to really give whatever I have and probably share with the students and make sure that they learn out of this. And I'm there on LinkedIn. You can reach out to me at any time. I'm decently active on LinkedIn. So let's connect if you have any other further follow-up questions.